So I'm incorporating into this week's module a discussion of a kid's book that was quite popular um, called The Matchlock Gun by Walter D. Edmonds. And I'm putting this in context to what we're covering when it comes to U.S. Expansion westward and the idea of the U.S. as a colonial settler state and how this affects in the present tense the natives of this land that is now called the United States of America. And we could go by further extension. There's indigenous people also from Mexico, Central and South America. But here we're focusing on this land that is now called the United States of America. And over the last few years, I've really been trying to incorporate more of the indigenous native history and how that relates to what we're talking about in a more concrete way. So, we learned about the Homestead Acts and just the idea of the U.S. expanding westward. Now, um, you will often hear, if you get involved in politics and debates about what to make of the United States of America, you will often hear the discussion about the U.S. being a settler colonial state. And that's usually kind of associated with wokeism by some critics, to make America feel demeaned for being settler colonial or something other than a rightful, uh, the right of the state to exist. And it's interesting because I feel that it's more of a kind of defensive mechanism as opposed to addressing an actual objectively true historical reality. Okay? There's no way to bypass this. This land was full of different tribes from different cultures that spoke different languages, and they were here for thousands of years. And this nation was created at the expense of those people. It's very simple, it's straightforward. Now, in the middle of that history, though, if you take my 101 class, we see that they're also not passive actors, and some groups betray other groups. Some the almost every conflict and almost every historic event in U.S. history, Native Americans get involved, and they're on different sides of these events. So, for example, in the U.S. Civil War, a lot of people don't know that General Grant, his right-hand man, secretary, was Ely Parker, and he was from the Seneca tribe, indigenous. Okay. A lot of people don't know, which is really counterintuitive, is that the last Confederate general to surrender, Stan Wadey, was Cherokee and a part of the Cherokee tribe. And um, you know, in other words, the roles and the placements that you find Native Americans throughout history is many different spots of our U.S. history that are highly important and relevant, but often downplayed, and they don't always fit the narrative of what would be considered a left or a right wing kind of like perspective, right? Okay, it's all over the place. So, all right. So, having said that, here this book, Matchlock Gun. This was a kid's book. It said that it's awarded the Newbery Medal as one of the most distinguished contributions of American literature for children. And I bought this book at one of the shops that I work at here in Portland. You can't see it with this video, but it says Chinook Elementary School. Chinook is one of the tribes or one of the languages. In any case, Chinook Elementary School, Vancouver School District. So this was for an elementary school. This was being used for who knows how long. And the book was originally written in 1941, but this was a copyrighted, this last book print was in 1969. And I checked online, and I believe it actually has been reprinted and it was a super popular book for a long time. Now, it's about a Dutch family who settles in the United States to live on the frontier. And they have a problem, so the story goes in the book. And the problem is violent Indians. This is the plot of the book. And it's very long. The art is interesting, but there's a constant theme of this gun, this Spanish gun, just waiting to help, uh, you know, become a part of the story that's going to. It's the future savior, and here we have this great artwork of this white family out in the wilderness, almost like a paradise, uh, dream come true space here in the United States. But there's only one problem, according to the book, and it's violent indigenous people who are not happy with them being here. And here they are, they have a little child and all sorts of things. And here again, as they are fearful of this environment that they're in, this gun is there to keep them safe. And lo and behold, you're going to see that they're going to be in a situation where the natives are going to be like wild animals trying to hurt the family. And eventually, as things ensue, it gets dark, it gets terrible, as this white woman is attacked by these indigenous people. But the little boy, he grabs that gun and he uses it in this moment. It's a kid's book for an elementary. And it shows him here, he's shocked by the situation of violence, and he's resting by the gun and realizing that he saved the day. And it ends, I'm just going to get to the end here. It says the militia return. Now, some of the Dutch names are a little hard to pronounce, so I may get those wrong, but you're going to get the idea, and I'll just read you how the book finishes. It says, the militia return. Tunis, riding in with half a dozen militiamen, found them so, Gertrude still unconscious, Trudy asleep, and Edward sitting up with the gun across his knees. The bellmouth pointing at the 3 dead Indian bodies. This is what the story says. On their way in, the men had found the barns burned at the brick house of Grandmother Van Alstyne and her slaves barricaded, refusing even then to come out. And in the creek valley they had found another Indian crippled and had killed him. But now while Tunis picked up Gertrude, the others sat their horses and stared at Edward to the dead Indians. They sneaked by us, Mindersay said. Who shot them? Edward. I did, with the Spanish gun, said Edward. You've killed more than all the rest of us put together, he exclaimed, and he picked up the gun and hefted it. Basically, it's the end. There's a little last sentence, but anyways, that's what this book is about. So it's interesting living here in Portland, Oregon. I've made friends over the years that are coming from reservations out here and other tribal areas, and a much stronger presence of Native Americans. And while growing up in the Central Valley of Modesto, this is almost seen as just like a total abstraction, right? You don't ever think about, we rarely run into someone who is Native American. And when someone usually says they are, it's a lot of people who says, well, that's my great-great-grandpa was, and they don't even have a tribe to identify with. And they may or may not be. But and I'm not saying that there's not indigenous people in Modesto, California, or in Central Valley, but I'm simply saying there's less likely of chance of you seeing them. But the presence up here in the Pacific Northwest is quite significant. I want you to think about what it's like being a child, an indigenous child, reading this in school and this is the way that school is portraying your existence of your people, like you're the wild animals, as if you were the invaders, right? And celebrating a kid's book celebrating killing a young boy, killing off uh, indigenous people. So this is deeply embedded in our culture. It's violent and it's aggressive, right? That's objectively true. Um, and so what I'm trying to also just help us realize in this class is this whole debate about what's woke and whatever, all these other kind of things. Um, let's just skip all that and just actually go into the facts of the history. Now, how you want to subjectively, like, you have a right to uh, approach this topic whatever way you want to. Like, some people actually don't care, okay? And some people say that, might makes right, or, you can't get hung up on the history. Um, keep in mind, I know a lot of indigenous people, they've joined the military, are actually conservative. It's not like the spectrum of politics and the way to look at America even varies wildly within the Native American community. But this notion of who we are and what we are, I think this kid's book really sums up. And this is late in the game. 1969 was last being taught. Published, probably going into the 70s. Who knows how long this has been taught to children growing up? How does that affect our view about uh, people? In other words, we talk about culture and the wholesomeness of culture, and people want to preserve our culture, but okay, so this is a part of our American tradition to have this kind of view being articulated even to children. So that's it. That's all I wanted to point out, and I'll leave it there, and you can do what the rest with this what you want.